Hey, this is a time lapse of a recent portrait I did. So, my canvas was painted with a light blue acrylic to start, and then I started sketching in my charcoal sketch. As you can see, I'm trying to be very loose and messy. I find as the painting goes on, it gets harder and harder to be loose and messy, so I like to start my initial sketches off. Like that, and I also like to have some of those kind of messy charcoal marks showing in the final piece, so I make sure to make lots of like big broad movements and just keep it as loose as I can. And then I am sketching in the face very loosely and roughly, and I didn't do any details, really just kind of got the overall proportions down. And then I started in with a first layer for the face, which I did in acrylic. And I'm doing this just so I have something to kind of work on that is really quick to dry, and then I can kind of go into that right away with my oils. I mean, after it dries 15 minutes later, I can go into it with my oil paints. So it's just a really nice starting place for me where I don't have to worry about how long it's gonna take to dry or working into it like I do with oil. And again, really easy to be super loose and messy with. So I don't need to stress out about it as much because it's not like oil. It's not going to stay on my canvas forever. I can very easily go over it. So I feel a little bit freer being really loose with acrylics. And then once that dried slightly, it dries so quickly. It didn't really need to wait long. But then I started working in a few of the more detailed aspects of the face. So trying to get the anatomy of the cheekbones and the eye sockets down, and the mouth and the chin. So no details, just really basic shapes. This is always hard for me working on a face that's sideways. So as you can see, I'm working at quite an angle because I kind of needed to look at both the photo and the painting sideways so that I could see the face right side up. I just find it like that's how I'm used to working with faces. I find it very difficult when it's switched around. Everything seems off. So I kind of can work sometimes just facing it normally, but then I have to keep turning my head and double checking everything. So as always, I'm kind of working my anatomy like it's a skull, working from the eye sockets and the cheekbones and the chin and the jaw first. And then from there, I'm putting in details like the eyebrows and the eyes and, the nostrils and smaller details and stuff like that. So just keeping it really simple to start and working and getting more and more detailed. Also the way that I paint. And here it got a little bright. The lighting changes a lot because it was very varying weather. So time to cuddle Mouse for a little bit, carry him around like a little baby. And then after that, I was sketching in that hand. I have her face lying down on a hand. So getting kind of the point where those two meet is challenging. Of course, it's challenging to get that sense that the cheek is really pushed up on the hand. So I did spend a while kind of working on that area, both in the sketch and while I was painting, not a while, it didn't really take much extra time, but it was something I was really cautious of, that I wanted to get that sense of the face being like pushed up on the hand. And it's a weird angle to do a hand from. So I was aware that might be a bit of an issue as well, just seeing only that side view of the hand. It's a little bit more confusing. So you can see my charcoal sketch is pretty much done here, and I'm just doing a little bit more of my water, which I will use to kind of erase areas of the charcoal sketch and adjust little bits of it. So you see me sometimes go in with a water and brush into my charcoal sketches and just do some adjustments with that because it's a really easy way to adjust charcoal. So after that, I mixed up my oil paints and I started in with some initial marks. My goal at the start when I'm painting is always to keep my brushstrokes like big and loose and free, and not get too caught up in how things look and if they're going well, but just instead be very loose. It was very dark, pretty much this whole week that I was painting this, but you can see I turned my lights on to check if it would be better with the lights, and it was not. It was still, I hate indoor lighting, so time for more Mouse cuddles. Again, he needs to be treated like a little baby and carried around for a little bit. It's an essential part of the painting process. Just makes me, better able to visualize the face, after I see his tiny little cat face. So I started off with some some of the areas that I thought were just a little bit larger. It's always hard to know exactly where to start, but the forehead is a pretty easy place to start, so I kind of like starting there. And then going in with some of the shadows around the nose, just because those were going in with some of the shadows around the face to me isn't usually where I go to first, but on this one just felt like the way to go, something I wanted to try. Generally not really the order that I go in though. And now you see me kind of going back to some of the larger areas, which is usually kind of what I want to start with. However, with this painting, I really didn't want to have paint, at least oil paint, on a lot of the big areas of the face, like a lot of the forehead and the cheek. So those areas I would usually kind of paint first, I intended to leave bare, so I didn't really have almost the option of starting with that. So instead, I think that's kind of why I went into some of the more shadowy areas. And and then just slowly kind of building up my face and figuring out the colors as I go. I knew I wanted to keep stuff pretty neutral. And with a lot of pinks in the cheeks and the nose, but quite neutral everywhere else and kind of almost grayish. But that's a hard color scheme to work with, and it's hard to tell. Getting some hugs there. Hard to tell if you're going too colorful, not colorful enough. So to me, I was just kind of like, well, let's go with it. Let's see, and build it up, and then I can always change it if I need to. But yeah, my aim was kind of grayer tones in the forehead and those kind of warmer brown shadow areas. You can see I have my fan on here for ventilation, so I do try to have windows open and fan going as much as possible when I'm oil painting, depending on how cold it is, because it is winter here in Canada. So looking for some shadowy areas that I can build up, and starting to get in the details around the nose and the eye now. So those are kind of smaller details I usually kind of save for that more like midpoint or getting towards the end even sometimes. Then I went back in with acrylic to do the hair. So you can't paint with acrylic on top of oil. I should have done the hair beforehand, but I didn't. But I hadn't painted on any of the hair spots with oil. In general, I don't like using acrylic at all once I've started with my oil, because you don't want to really have acrylic, mixing with your oil at all. But I also kind of loved these like drips coming down my canvas with the hair. Again, it's kind of letting go of a little bit of control and being like, you know what, it can be messy and weird. So you can see I've gone in with a lot more of the details now more mouse cuddles is a big important part of the process. More details now in the nose and the eyes and the mouth. So those are something that is kind of for later on. You can also almost see that it's like a lot more movement at this stage, is because I'm doing like so many different little parts. At the beginning, it's quite simple and, just big simple areas. And then as it goes on, it gets like smaller and smaller, and there's more kind of lots of little tiny adjustments and everything. This is finished painting. And the only thing I did after the time lapse was I added this random kind of mark of red as I was walking by it. And I like how that turned out. So thanks for watching, guys.